You're listening to Ideal Practice, episode number 33. And today, guys, we are going to have a fascinating conversation with my good friend and business coach, Elaine Bailey. Elaine is a certified expert in the Enneagram. And so I've asked her to join us to give us kind of an overview, an introduction into what this amazing tool can do for you as a healer, as a clinician, and as a practice owner. And if you'll stay around to the end, she's got a tremendous free resource for you that's going to help you go even deeper if you want to know more. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Wendy Pitts-Reeves, and with over 2 decades of experience in the private practice world, I've built my 6-figure business while learning a lot of lessons the hard way. This is the first podcast that shows you how to apply the principles of energy, alignment, and strategy to build a practice that is profit-centered, but people-forward. This is the Ideal Practice Podcast. Hey guys, this is Wendy. Welcome back to Ideal Practice. It's so good to be back with you. As many of you know, I have been offline and away for a while. My wife and I actually did a month-long camping trip up and down the East Coast. We were gone several weeks. It was quite a trip, and yes, it was outstanding. And yes, we had all kinds of adventures, like the wild pony on Assateague Island in Virginia, who came to visit me by sticking his head in the door of the camper while I was fixing some lunch. So lots of fun things happened on the trip, and it was great to get away. It is great to be back. That's the beauty of travel, right? And it's why I'm a big fan of it and why I recommend it for all of you as well. But it's time to get back to work, and we got lots of good stuff to talk about. So let me tell you a little bit about what's going to happen today. You get to meet Elaine Bailey. Elaine is a very good friend of mine. She was my coach for a long time herself, and she is quite the expert in all things related to the Enneagram. I have learned so much from her about this incredibly useful tool. And today, I actually use this all the time, both as a psychotherapist and as a business coach myself. I have found it to be one of the most useful tools I've ever come across, honestly. And I'm learning more about it all the time. What we're going to do in this episode is we're going to give you an introduction to kind of a high-level view of each of the 9 types that the Enneagram covers. We'll talk about the dominant type itself, the pattern that's involved with that, and some of the challenges, both the strengths and the challenges of each of those types. To make this a little bit easier for those of you who want to go further, Elaine has created a very special free resource for you, which she will tell you about at the end, that I think is super cool. I also am going to add timestamps to the show notes below so that you can zip forward or back to our discussion of a particular personality type if you want to go hear that again. I think that will make it a little bit easier for you. And if this is completely new to you, you may find it a little overwhelming because there are 9 numbers, 9 types. There's a lot to say. But I have to tell you that when this finally began to click for me, it was a game changer. It made such a huge difference, both in how I understood myself and where I got in my own way, and how I see, understand, and work with my clients. In fact, my own sort of breakthrough moment with the Enneagram was really powerful. And I'll have to tell you about that in another episode because we've gone long enough with this one. But that is a story I will share with you at some point because it was a doozy. So with that, and without further ado, let's dive in and let me introduce you to my sweet, amazing, brilliant friend, Elaine Bailey. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Wendy. I am so glad you're here with me today because I get to introduce to you today one of my dearest friends on the planet, someone who has been a huge source of support and teaching for me. You get to meet Elaine Bailey. Elaine is one of the coaches that I've worked with quite a bit, actually, over the last several years. And one of the things that I mentioned to you in the intro that she is an expert, there are many things she's an expert in, but is the role of the Enneagram. And for a lot, I know that a lot of you are curious about this. You've asked me about it. I hear people saying they're hearing about it, but they don't really know much about it. Elaine knows all the goods. So say hello, Elaine, and welcome to the program.
Hey, hello, and thank you for inviting me, Wendy. I'm honored to be here.
Such a treat. Such a treat. We talk all the time, but we don't get to talk like this. So this is really, really fun. So just to get us started, why don't you tell them who you are, where you are, and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, well, my full and legal name is Elaine Bailey Anderson, and I live here in Asheville, North Carolina, with my husband. One dog, four cats, and a multitude of bears that surround my property, which is great, which of course, I all give names to.
And y'all, she's not kidding about that. She really does have bears all around her that she does name. That's true. Mm-hmm.
And hopefully none will come while we're on this podcast. Otherwise, we'll be diverted. But tell you a little bit about myself. My whole career of now, I've stopped counting numbers, but 30 years thereabouts is in learning and development. I've been a professional leadership development consultant for many, many years, traveling the world, training, coaching, and consulting. And leadership development, big organizations, delivering and designing programs, coaching in a whole range of leadership skills, behavioral skills, mostly to Fortune 500 companies and small businesses as well around the world. So I've worked with thousands of executives, managers, and leaders and business owners over this period of time, over the years. I have a rare blend of academia and in the trenches coaching that I feel sets me apart from most coaches who coach because I walk my talk. And I've helped hundreds of other coaches as well to fully develop their potential and live bigger lives and have more impact and income as well. So what I do today is I empower coaches to create impactful results for their clients and have a much more rewarding coaching practice as a result of it. That's really, in a nutshell, about me.
And that's a lot. Like what you just said was a lot. I want people to kind of capture that 30 years worth of leadership development, training, coaching, and consulting, literally around the world, with companies large and small. Which is a wealth of experience to bring to this conversation. And I can speak as someone who has coached with you off and on for a good while. I've seen you in action. I know what you bring to the table. It is remarkable, no matter whether you're talking to one person as a small startup entrepreneur or whether you're talking to a more advanced team or company. So tell us about the Enneagram. How did you get into this? Like where did this evolve?
Yeah, it's an interesting journey because I already had personality tools and I was accredited in personality tools because of the nature of my work. If I work for a big organization, they might like DISC or they might prefer Myers-Briggs or something like that. So I would always make sure that I was certified in the tools that they required. So I certainly didn't need another personality tool when I first started. It was just like, oh, here's another one. But how wrong I was in terms of this, because for me, cutting a very long story short, the Enneagram became the missing piece in my coaching business. So, 1997 it was. I got my first ever diploma. I was in the professional coaching world right at the beginning of its inception, if you like, and I became a professional coach as well as a leadership development professional. So I worked primarily with emerging leaders and first-time managers. So all of these people had the same goal. They all wanted to be a great leader for their staff. And of course, developing leadership skills is important, like delegation and all those types of things, and how to performance manage people, all important. But what I noticed was most of them weren't struggling with the strategy side of the work, although it's very easy to learn and develop that stuff. They were struggling with the mindset. And they were, it's like, can I really do this? Am I really cut out to be this? They didn't believe they could be leaders. So I started to notice this and refocus my efforts on helping them change their mindsets. And I used to have to do this backdoor, because when people bring me into organizations, it was for strategy and results. If you start talking about mindsets and or what they called soft skills, then it was like, no, we don't need that. We need strategy to get results. But actually what they didn't realize was that, the soft is the hard, because if you get your mindset right, then everything else follows. So I found that I was successful with some people, but not all of them. And I kept asking myself, why is that? And that's really when the aha happened for me, because I realized that one size doesn't fit all. And I realized that something fundamental here, or something deep, was missing in my coaching practice. Now, I've got a master's degree in coaching mentoring, so it wasn't like I was, I was lacking in the skills of being a coach, but there was something even deeper than what I was learning. And at that time, I was learning. I was actually doing my master's degree. So,
what this makes me think of is that when people say to me, I'm doing all the right things, but I'm still not making any money, or I've been to school and I've followed all the rules, but how come I'm not getting new clients? So how come one person looks quite successful and someone else is really struggling, even though they're technically doing the right thing? Strategy only carries you so far. That's right.
Absolutely. And it's almost the outside. We're working on the outside how you work and interact with other people and things like this, or how you do this job, or how you do that, performance. When in fact, it's actually, you really do have to go within. And what I came to realize, of course, is that people have different worldviews. And I realized that my clients saw the world and themselves through different lenses. So as one person would view something one way, another person would view it slightly different. So therefore, one size wouldn't fit all, because their psychological makeup was different. Was different. So the same fix, if you like, and I don't particularly like that word, but the same fix isn't, one size fits all. One fix applies to everybody.
Right. One intervention would not work for everyone.
No,
right.
It would work for some, but
or
it depended
coaching, how you would coach somebody.
Yeah, your approach to how they were showing up. So their mindset issues towards becoming a leader was different. And as I say, I noticed that I got great results with some, but not with others. So this is what, around about the same time, the Enneagram was presented to me. And I went and did the quick test in the Rizzo and Hudson Wisdom of the Enneagram book. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. And, it's good to know your number, and it's, good to start to play with it. But I never really thought that much more about it. But then when this started to happen in my coaching work and my training work, I started to go deeper. And what I found was the Enneagram is one of the most profound frameworks and systems. And for me, it goes much deeper than any of the other psychological personality profiling tools, should I say, that I've ever used. So, and it unfolds. And I can tell you what the Enneagram is, if that's
I would love to do an introduction to it, right?
Yeah.
If you want to just kind of give us an overview.
Yeah, so, and people ask me this all the time, what is the Enneagram? Well, as I've said already, we all have a different worldview that we learn to adapt to our environment in early life. And when we're born free of any unconscious patterns or conditions or conditioning. And we're pure love, if you like. I see it very much that we are so connected to source. We are pure love even on a spiritual level. But then life happens, right? So life gets in the way. And as we experience life, we become constricted as our personality tries to defend us from emotional pain and fear. And what happens is we develop unconscious habits and patterns, and these hold us back, and they form our limiting beliefs and perceptions. And ultimately, impact our behavior, how we show up, what is it like being on the receiving end of us, and then it limits our results, it limits what we can do. And you might find, here I am again, because the same things happen, because we're conditioned. In fact, it's surprising how much we function mechanically according to our habits and patterns. And I'm sure you guys who are listening to this, and Wendy, I know you know this very much, is that we respond in predictable, repetitive ways according to this early programming.
And what I love about this is that anybody who's in the mental health world, especially, it's a common thing with clients that clients will say, "I've worked on this. Why does this keep happening to me?
Right.
I've already dealt with this. Why am I still in? My last relationship was like this. Why is this one like this?" And I think, as practice owners run into the same thing. Why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep having the same problem? So it's interesting because I can see that from both sides of you. And what you're saying is like, there's a pattern here that has a deeper explanation. And once you understand that, you can do something with it.
And these patterns are predictable. So there are 9, if you like, core dominant personality types. Mm-hmm. And what the Enneagram does is it gives us a map. It's like an owner's manual of how you work, how you operate, if you like. And it identifies those predictable patterns for you. And it's like having your own set of instructions, helping you to create conscious choices and do something different to ultimately create a healthier, a happier, and a more balanced life. And it reminds me of the quote that I'm sure many of your, if not all of your listeners know about, from Viktor Frankl. And I kind of wrote it down so I didn't goof it and mess it up. But between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in the space, there is the power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. So what that's saying really is that we need to create mental and emotional space inside ourselves and become the observer to understand ourselves. And I know that's not always easy to do, because it's hard to catch in the moment, rather than just being absorbed in your patterns and getting triggered and pulled. There's no gap between stimulus and response. Yeah. So what we need to know is how we operate in the present and start where we are. And that's what the Enneagram really helps you to do. It helps you to step into the present moment, catch yourself, create that gap between stimulus and response, become the observer in your life or the student of you in your life. It helps you to be able to almost like grow a long pointy chin and go, and be curious and look at things.
I was thinking about the word curious, like be curious. And you said be an observer of yourself, which you're right. It's hard to do when you're in the middle of the mess. Yeah. But if you can step out of it for a moment, and once you begin to learn about these patterns and go, oh my gosh, is this the same thing? Here it is again. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you give yourself compassion. And there's a tenderness with it as well, because it's not the truth of who you are. It's just the pattern. It's your ego's defense to these, the fear or the pain that you're going through. And what it actually does, the Enneagram helps you to give you the conscious choice to do something different. So for me, it's huge. It's the missing piece for a happier and more balanced life. And I've been using it for the best part now of 10 years, if not longer. And I can't imagine coaching without it. It runs as an operating system in the background of my practice. I use it more sometimes. I use it less other times, depending on the client. But it's always there informing me, because I'm able to meet the client where they are. I meet them where they are in their pattern, because believe it or not, we're in pattern most of the time.
Which I know people are going to resent. I've had people say things like they hate this idea because I don't want to be so predictable. Right. We don't want to be predictable. We all like to think that we're unique. And we are, but patterns are patterns. So this will be hard for people who are hearing this and not seeing a diagram.
Right.
But can you, the best you can, kind of talk us through
let me tell me a little. Let me tell you a little bit about the 9 types and what I would recommend anybody. I mean, I don't know whether it's something you can post, just an Enneagram. I can send you one if you like it, just the symbol at the end, so you can see the 9s at the top, and it's like a circle, follows around clockwise 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you get to 6 o'clock, if you like, at the bottom. And then it's 5, 6, 7, 8 goes back up the left-hand side. So 9 sits in the center and the top. And I'm not going to go into why, but
right.
we're following it around. So there are 9 types. So let me share a little bit about each type. And you might, as you're listening to this today, you might just be able to see yourself or and notice yourself, or some of your clients as well as you're going through.
Right.
So let's talk about number one. One is the perfectionist, is known as the perfectionist, and their focus of attention is on being right and making things right. So perfectionists are perfectionists. They feel terrible if they make a mistake, if they get something wrong. Right is right, and let me show you how. So they can show you how things are done because they have a right way and a wrong way.
More and black and white.
Yeah,
right.
Black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Let me show you how. But they are very dedicated and reliable.
Mm.
Now, the coping strategies that one has, a perfectionist has, and a coping strategy is really what protects us from that early emotional fear or pain. So the coping strategies, and this is what might show up for you, especially if you're coaching or counseling somebody, but they have very high standards. They have a very, very vicious inner critic.
Yeah, I was going to say really harsh inner self-talk.
Yeah, I mean, it's relentless, and they set very high standards that are sometimes unattainable. They also know what is right and what is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I'm a 1, I want to be in control of things. What else do? I judge myself and others. They're very hard at judging themselves, but they will judge others as well.
I have found them to have a really, really high sense of integrity.
Yes.
So these make really good CPAs, attorneys, ethics officers in an organization.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you've got a 1 on your team, you know, and they're functioning in a healthy way, it's really great, really reliable. Really, you know, they're on it. They're going to make sure they do a good job. I mean, that has a downside to it as well. So that's one, the perfectionist. I'll not go into too much more detail because I know.
And we should say all of these are a spectrum in terms of healthy and unhealthy in the ways that this shows up.
Absolutely.
So we're just going to hit the highlights of the healthy.
Yeah, I'm just going to hit the highlights and how they might show up, a little bit how they might get in the wrong way. And, you know, there's so much more you can learn about this. But you might see yourself, as I say. Number 2 is, or type 2 is the helper or the giver. Now, they are our people pleaser. They focus on the needs of others. That's their priority. That's their unconscious priority. So what do you need? They need to be needed.
Mm.
They will deny having any needs. That's all in shadow. That's all unconscious. They're very warm and friendly, have a very outward energy. You might feel they're penetrating into your eyes. Sometimes their eyes penetrating into your soul. The coping strategies that they have is self-sacrifice. They'll self-sacrifice their own needs for others. They have to take care of others, whether others want them to take care of them or not. They'll use flattery as well as a way to be liked or loved because they are needing the connection. They are needing the love, if you like. It might not be love in a work relationship, but there is that they want a disconnection. If they feel they're disconnected to you, it can be terrible for a 2.
And I think of these people as like the experts behind the throne that make everything happen. Like they make great administrative assistants. They're the great operations people. They are the ones that can make things happen, right?
They can be, depending on the subtypes, because the subtypes have little nuances as well. But they absolutely can be.
Yeah.
And the social type, which we won't go into subtypes today. But there's slightly different blendings and nuances. But yes, absolutely, they can be. They can be behind the
caretakers.
Yes, yeah. And if their philosophy is, if I give to you, then maybe I'll get something back in return.
Yeah.
And sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't, and then resentment might kick in. So that's how 2 is the helper. They may bring you gifts as well, which is interesting. You know, they may bring you a gift of something every time, or they might, because they may spend more of the time in the session asking how you are and what's going on for you.
Right. Rather than letting you, right.
Right.
It doesn't matter about me. Seriously, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay. So
I'm good.
But if they're coming for coaching or they're coming for counseling or therapy, then hopefully there's an opening there. They've opened up a little bit. And it's really the hardest thing for a 2 is for them to be open and to be able to do things for themselves, to be able to look after themselves and start to that they matter too. And that can be really hard for a 2, really hard. Mm-hmm. So we'll move on to 3, our achiever. So the achiever is, of course, their focus of attention is going to be on their accomplishments and achieving. So as a description for them, how I would define an achiever is that they want to feel valued and appreciated, for sure. They strive to create the best image to help them achieve the goal. So they can be a little bit chameleon-like. They'll shape-shift a bit because they're striving for the best image that they're reading you to, and if they value you, for them to be able to achieve the goal.
And are these people, sometimes I think of them as the performer. Is that a fair word
they
to
can
use?
Yeah, they can perform, because they'll perform if they perceive you to have value and they're interacting with you, then they'll unconsciously, of course, but they're creating that best image. So you might find they start dressing like you a little bit. They're not merging with you, but they want to create that best image. They're an image point, which we're not going to today, but they're an image point on the Enneagram. 2, 3s, and 4s are image points. Mm-hmm. So as for them to be able to achieve and be successful, and achieve that goal, that's what they'll do. And the challenge with them is, the challenge for the poor 3 is that they'll only feel appreciated only briefly when this happens. So they have to consistently strive for more and more and more. So when they are successful, they're going to move on to the next thing because the time's passed. So how they cope, and this is how it might show up for you, and may even show up for you in your, if you are a 3 in your own practice. But they have to be the best in every aspect of their life. So at school, as they were growing up, they might have been first in the class for everything, great at sports. I'm not saying that that's always the case, but, they always have to be the best. Achievement and success is everything. And as I say, they can adapt.
Reflection from other people. Look at me. Do you see how great I'm
doing? Yeah. 1 or 2 of them, again, a certain nuance, a certain subtype is, they may name drop and say, hey, I was talking to such and such the other day, or this person, that person. Right. So there is that. But they are very adaptable, and they can reinvent themselves for each situation. And they do work hard all the time.
Yes.
When I've worked with them, and I've worked with many of them over the years, especially in the corporate world, often they've crashed and burned. Or, I worked with one lady who was, she was in the hospital after having a serious threat of a heart attack, and she was in her 30s. And her boss had to peel the laptop away from her because she didn't have a life outside of work. And I'm not saying just because of that you're a 3, but they do work hard all the time. And often it's the crash and burn. It's a life event that actually opens them up to come, and because they don't see it. And they see feelings as a waste of time as well. They are a feeling type on the Enneagram. They're in that arena, but they avoid their feelings. So if you have a 3 boss and you're crying because something's happened, they'll just sit there quietly and then move on as if nothing's happened.
And you wonder why.
Because they feel it's a waste of time. Oh, don't get, all that sappy and soft stuff. We don't need it in the workplace, kind of thing.
Right.
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 So that's our achievers. And the individualist is the 4. So just from even the term, the individualist, you can see that their focus of attention is on being unique and different. They are, in contrast to the 3, they are really feelings based. But let me give you a description. 4s tend to live in their imagination and their feelings is how I would describe that. They're unique and special. Because if they
These
are
the
unique,
unicorns and the snowflakes.
It is.
Or the ones who see themselves that way.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm different. This won't work for me because I'm different.
Right.
I bet you've never had anybody like me.
Right.
I bet nobody's ever said this before to you. You get those type of people. But if the reason they do this is because it's protection again, the ego protecting them. But if they are unique or special, and they're special enough or unique enough, then they believe that they're going to attract love.
Right.
They really dread being ordinary, and they can be moody as well. So they go on
Dramatic.
the spectrum of dramatic. It's up and down.
I think of these as the Scorpios.
Yes, yeah. And I think they're not all. I do know a Tyrian force, so I think they're spread, but and they're creative and sensitive. But I'm not saying they're the only types on the Enneagram that are creative and sensitive, but they kind of fall into that category because they're very attuned to their feelings. So how they're
really deep, they run deep, and so you love me because I'm special and unique.
Yeah, and I'm different to everybody else. It's almost like as a kid they were othered. They were kicked. They felt that they were different from the rest of the family. You may find that. So their coping strategies that you might come across are, of course, I mentioned a little bit already, emotionally sensitive. They'll fantasize about things being different. There's a bit of idealization there. They'll withdraw to protect themselves. If I'm a 4, I'm searching for what's missing inside of me. They feel like something's missing. They can feel that way.
And they tend to go inside. They tend to go deep, right?
They do. And if you're looking at energy, their energy is deep, set. It's almost coming from the bottom of the heart. You can almost sense it. There's a deep richness to it. They believe that they are their feelings. So, and that can influence everything. And their moods control, their feelings or their experiences. So my mood controls my experience. So if I'm in a bad mood, I might as well just write the day off. In worst case scenarios, we're talking more, kind of in pattern and unhealthy here.
So I'm thinking as we're talking through these, we're up to 1 through 4. I have to resist the temptation to think about all the individuals I know who fall into these categories and to start telling stories. But one of the things I want to say to everybody is, as you're hearing these are super high level. We're just giving you the tip of the iceberg of this. There are multiple layers to all of these. And one set of behaviors or one sort of a tendency that you think of how somebody acts does not define them. So I just want to kind of tell everyone to resist the temptation right off the bat to start diagnosing everybody. This is, as a therapist, when you start learning about diagnosing, you go home, they tell you, don't read the DSM because you'll have everything in there. And I'm thinking that as we go through this, I'm holding a diagram in front of me so I can state because it helps me. But I find myself when I'm talking to a new client, it helps. It helps to have it in front of you. Just this week, I was doing an intake with a new psychotherapy client. And the whole time I was talking to her, I was trying to think, are you a 2 or a 1? Are you a 1 or a 2? What am I dealing with here? Is this a 1 or a 2? And by the end of the thing, I thought, oh, it's not either one. She's an 8. I'm pretty sure she's an 8, right? And I mean, who knows? I could be wrong because I was just getting to know her. But I just kind of want to caution people because I think when you hear something like this as a high level description, it's easy to start going, oh my gosh, that sounds like me, or oh my gosh, that sounds like my friend. And it may actually be that, but there's just a lot more to it. I just want to say that before we go further.
And we're all connected to 5 numbers, but what we're looking at here is what do you predominantly show up as, and we're doing a very light touch today. So
good point.
So we're if you like on the Enneagram circle, we're at the bottom now. We're at 35 minutes past the hour, if you like, in terms of where it is on the diagram. So the 5 is an investigator, and they're focused on investigating how things work. Now, don't fall into the trap of if somebody likes reading lots of books and so on, there must be a 5 because there's more to it than this. So to give you a description of it, the 5s are very analytical, detached, and self-sufficient. The world seems overwhelming to them. They live up in the back of their heads, live in their minds.
Yeah.
They'll minimize connections with people because if I minimize my connections, then you're not going to pull and ask me for more because that's exhausting.
It's Mr. Spock.
A little bit. There's a safety of being invisible with a 5. I've known many 5s that will blend into the crowd, and disappear. That they don't want to be seen in sense of that. So how they
the quiet one in the family reunion, they'll be the one in a couple that tends to disappear in the relationship.
Yeah, in a family reunion, they might be sat there using their iPad and reading a story, or going while everybody else is playing a game or something like that. Or they may go off to another room and sit. And they're not upset or anything like that. They're just doing their thing.
Yeah.
So, and that's where these coping strategies come in, because, I minimize all my needs as a 5. I'm self-sufficient. I don't rely on others for anything. I don't need to interact. I can withdraw to my mind. Some of them have these whole fantasy worlds in their mind, they have it, because it's a safer place than being out here in this threatening world. And I get exhausted as a 5 if others are demanding my time and energy. They feel that there's a limit to that. It's not the truth, but they feel there is a limitation to that. So they will pull themselves away. And one other thing about a 5 is they must know more than others. So they want to be the expert. It's capability, being capable, knowing things is really important for a 5.
And invulnerable.
Or investigate.
There's an invulnerability there.
Right. Because being scared of not knowing, not having the answers is terrifying for a 5. Definitely.
Very interesting.
So if we move on to 6, then that's like 20 to the hour on the clock of the Enneagram. This is the guardian or loyalist. So their focus of attention is on feeling safe and secure. So they want to feel safe and secure. So out of all of them in the Enneagram, I would say these are most loyal to their friends and their beliefs. Once you have a loyal, a 6 as a loyal friend, then it's very powerful. They're there for life, unless you do something to them.
But they take a lot.
And that, yes, it would take a lot. 6s tend to be practical and committed as well. The world isn't safe. So they have to be very vigilant to anticipate things. They're very good at perceiving a danger before it happens. So they may even go, you might be in a restaurant with them and they'll sit with their back to the wall and they'll know where the fire escapes are. They'll know what to do in case of this. And they're always scanning for danger.
I have to share this.
Yeah, go.
I used to think of a 6 as the worrier. Right, like they're the not worrier. But I have come to, since taking your course, actually, I have come to think of that a 6 is someone who has a plan B, a plan C, a plan D.
Absolutely.
And I laugh at it because my mother, who when I was a kid, one very short story. When I was a kid, we went for a short, quiet walkway in the Smokies. Just a little short hike in the Smokies. My brother and I were probably like 7 and 9. It was in the winter. The trail was covered with snow. We didn't go very far off the trail before we got lost, and because you couldn't tell the trail from anything else. It took us a couple of hours to find our way back out to the road. Wow. We were never in a lot of danger, but it's easy to get into trouble at a time like that. To this day, 60 years later, give or take, my mother never goes anywhere without matches. Because she did not have matches in her purse. She kept thinking I was carrying a purse, and I didn't have. She took a purse in the woods, but she didn't have matches, and she had little kids, and there was snow on the ground. And we have teased her about that her whole life ever since. But she's the one. I used to make fun of her, and then I realized that whatever I needed, she had. On any trip we ever went on, she had it. You need some fingernail clippers, she's got it. You need a Kleenex, she's got it. You need matches, she's got it. And she always thinks about safety in a way that sometimes it exhausts me. Yes. But she's a 6. Yes. And once I understood this, I'm like, oh, I get it. This is how she organizes things. It makes perfect sense. And Absolutely. It's handy because I don't think of those things.
No, because you might just show up and she knows it's going to rain or whatever, and she's got umbrellas and
right. I don't even have a raincoat, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. Yes, you kind of need these people around that keep us out of trouble.
And I tell you what, if something does happen, it's great to have a 6 around because they've already got a contingency plan for it. They've already thought it through, and they can be really great in a crisis situation because they can be the calmest in a crisis situation as a result of that. Mm-hmm. So how the kind of ego, if you like, that unconsciously develops these coping strategies. If I'm a 6, I'll react against fear. I don't trust my inner authority, so I don't trust myself. So I'm always looking outside of myself for guidance and loyalty. I have a constant committee of voices in my head giving me all these different other opinions. And I need information from the outside to make me feel safe. But
because I don't trust my own inside. I don't trust my own.
You don't trust your inner authority. And as a result of that, then it's hard sometimes to make decisions because you're not sure. And maybe I'll ask somebody else. Maybe I'll ask somebody else. Maybe I'll ask somebody else.
Yes. So interesting.
Fear is the key motivation for a 6.
Managing fear, trying not to be fearful,
managing it,
protecting against fear. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they are. It's a huge motivator in the background there in terms of that they are focused on managing fear.
Okay.
As are the 5 and the 7 actually as well. But again, we'll not go into those details. But let's move on to the 7 then. The 7 is an optimistic enthusiast. So they are focused on what's next, what's the future possibilities. If you know a 7 or you're with a 7, you might be having lunch with them and they're not present in the moment. They're eating their lunch, but they're already thinking about what they're going to have for dinner.
Right.
At 900 miles an hour, probably.
Right, moving at the speed of light all the time.
Moving at the speed of light. Totally.
I think of 7s as like Odie in Garfield and Odie. He was the little dog that was like,
the dog. Yeah.
Like they're so excited, so excited, so excited. That's how I think of a 7.
That's a really good description. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, I mean, they're always looking out. They're always looking outside of themselves for new opportunities, new possibilities. They feel very excited about life. They try to stay positive all the time, so they'll try and keep that up.
Optimistic.
Optimism. If they're with a group of people, they'll try and raise that energy. They'll try and keep it positive all the time, which is actually exhausting for 7s, but they don't realize it. They don't like to feel trapped or bored or limited in their choices. And they'll keep their options open. And if they do feel trapped, there's nothing worse. That can be terrifying for a 7. So the coping strategies they suffer from FOMO, fear of missing out, or can do. They don't want to miss out because there's so many opportunities, so many possibilities. What's the best one? So if you invite them to something, they've probably been invited to 2 or 3 other things at the same time. Yeah. And they may not let you know until last minute because they're keeping those options open till last minute.
So I'm thinking of these might be the clients that every week they come in with a new drama, a new story, or a new plan. So you have a great conversation with them and they walk out the door going, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to handle the situation with my kids or my spouse, or this is what I'm going to do in my job. And you come back the next week and they have a whole nother new idea. Yes. They've changed their mind and they're going to, and you can sort of feel like your head spins a little bit because you can't keep up with them. Yeah.
That's very, very, very true. And another angle of that too, of a 7, which people don't often see, is that they'll come and they'll set goals. So they'll say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. And then they go home and there's something that stimulates them, or they get lost in something else, or they get lost in their own pattern and they forget to remember what it is they're supposed to be doing. So the next week they come back, or 2 weeks' time they come back for a session, and you end up rerunning the same session because they've forgotten. They didn't remember what they were supposed to remember. So often with 7s, I get them to use a learning journal or just a personal journal to write things down so they can be committed to it and to remember.
Stay present.
Help them to remember and stay, because they're very, very often not present in the moment.
Yeah.
Especially, and we're talking about when they're in pattern here, not right. Not when they're more consciously aware.
Right.
So if I'm a 7, I'm always searching for new experiences, adventures. The answers are on the outside. I find it hard to complete things, just like you were saying, Wendy, because I'll jump to the next thing. Here's another idea. Here's another program I can create. Here's another thing. And they get easily bored. I think some of that boredom is actually unconsciously fear peeping out. And, they get anxious. There's the thread of anxiety that is running through a 7, in the background of a 7, that 7s may not even know that is there. Some 7s don't even know it's there. I know I'm a 7, and for many years I didn't know that. I thought I was the bravest person in the world doing all the things I've done in my life. And what I realized was I was terrified. And anxiety ran as a theme in the background. But I didn't know it because I'd move on to the next thing.
Which also makes me think that you could be working with someone who's a 7 and they look fine because they are doing so many big things and they're on to the next and on to the next. And it would be easy to sort of, as a therapist or a coach, to miss what's going on underneath.
Absolutely. They're very good at hiding it.
Yeah.
So, 7s are very, very sensitive, but you never see this because they keep it very, very well hidden.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll always keep my options open. I'll always have a plan B. And I'll have loads of ideas. And they're the ones that may come to you and say, I bet you haven't had anybody like this before. I have so many ideas. I had one 7 who came to me once and said, I have so many ideas that I think I should set up a business as an ideas person for people because I have so many ideas. It's kind of that way. But that's our 7. Always happy, always jolly. The fun one at the, you might invite them to a party because they're always going to be fun and a good laugh, but you don't know what's going on in the background. They're skimming the surface. They're not in touch with their emotions. Right. They're not processing their feelings. And that's what they have to learn to do, to stay with it and be with it.
All right. Take us to the 8.
Yeah. 8's challenger. So you probably guess even just from the title of that their focus is on power and control. So how I would describe an 8 would be, when you're in the presence of an 8. Mm-hmm. They're confident, they're intense, and they have big energy. The room fills up with their energy. What they're doing is avoiding showing any vulnerability. That's very
fierce.
Well hidden.
I think of them as fierce.
Yeah, they can be fierce. Mm-hmm. They can be intimidating and aggressive. Mm-hmm. They'll stand up for what they believe in, very much so. And they'll protect anyone who they perceive to be maybe weak and the underdog. They'll take them under their wing. And how they cope, their coping strategies when they're in pattern is, I need to be in control of everything.
Yeah.
I must impose my will and truth onto others. There's one way of doing it. It's my way, my friend, or the highway. And I don't care if you don't want to do it my way. The more control I have, the less vulnerable I'll feel. So that's why I want the control. And they'll dominate.
I'm going to say this can look like people like some certain a boss or someone who is very intimidating and threatening and kind of scary. But it can also be that mama bear kind of energy, super protective and, oh, hell no, you're not going to get in my way and stop my kids from doing whatever. So
absolutely. If you're in their tribe or family, it could be a real family or perceived family, they are going to protect you. Yeah. And if you do something to damage that relationship, you go, really badly go against them or something like that, then they'll throw you out, never to be returned. Yeah. But they'll live hard and play hard as well. So they don't know the strength of their own energy. That's and one of the things that I teach and coach with 8s is that it's almost like they have a dial on the side and they can actually turn the dial down. And
you always say, what is it like to be on the receiving end of you? That's one of the things you say all the time. And I think thinking about who I know, some of the people that I know who are 8s, I think they really don't know most of the time how forceful they are or how consistent and powerful they are. And it's not, sometimes that's really awesome. Sometimes it's exactly what you want. Sometimes it's not. Without self-awareness, it's like with all of these, I'm thinking there's a strength here to use for you once you're aware of it. Yes. Or it can be a problem that gets in your way if you're not careful. Yes. So, yeah, good.
Yeah, and you don't need to, and 8s can get exhausted without knowing it because they're using all that energy and they don't need to use all that energy as much. Yeah. So, and it can, I've worked with one of the case studies that I share with clients sometimes is that this particular manager was making people cry and he didn't, he just thought they were weak. And that wasn't the truth. He didn't know what it was like being on the receiving end of him, but he was open enough to be able to do that. You might find it's rare you get an 8, even in therapy, because I know what I'm doing. I'm successful. I get my own way. I'm a bull in a china shop. I drive through and push and get what I want.
And they don't show vulnerability, so they're not going to ask for help.
Absolutely. Right. So why do they may come and talk about the Enneagram. Go, well, I don't believe in this fluffy stuff anyway, but I don't need anything. So it's my way or the highway, definitely.
Yeah.
So last but not least, let's look at the peacemaker, who's a 9. That's right at top center, 12 o'clock noon, if you like, on the clock.
Yep.
And the focus of attention of the peacemaker is on harmony and keeping the peace. So they want everybody to get along. They're kind of laid back, friendly, accommodating. They play down their own presence.
Mediator.
They'll blend into the background. Yeah, they're easygoing, will go with the flow. They're good mediators. So because they can see, they have a good way of seeing all the different perspectives of things. So they can actually pull something together help people to look at things from the other side.
I often think about UN peace negotiators and wonder whether they're nines or not. Because as I understand it, the nine has the ability to sort of see everyone's point of view, which can be helpful in certain situations.
Yeah, and some nines with one wing, we may mention wings in a moment, I don't know, but that's like a little blending of the one. So, and I'll explain what that means. But they're often therapists, counselors, teachers. I can't tell you how many therapists and counselors I know who are nines with one wings. I can list them all off for you. There's a ton of them. But their coping strategies, how they cope then is when they're in pattern, is they try not to be noticed. They're careful not to rock the boat. They'll withdraw into the background. They might have low energy. It's a bit like having a vacuum cleaner, and then when you stretch the cord and it just comes out of the wall.
Yeah.
It's low energy. So they might say yes when they mean no. They do withdraw. They'll go along with other people's agenda. I might be passive and non-assertive, and they may not even know what they want because it's not important. So. That can be a hard thing when you start working with a nine. Sometimes is they don't really know what they want because they're so much focused on what everybody else wants.
I love it. So, and as we're talking, I'm thinking this is why this is tricky too, because one of the common things I've seen as a therapist over the years is so many, mostly women, but sometimes it's not, sometimes it's the guys, but a lot of women who put their kids first, put their spouse first, put whatever committee they're serving on, whatever neighborhood in. They're always taking care of everybody else other than themselves. And so a lot of my work over the years has been about teaching women to ask the question, what do you want? And giving themselves permission to go after it. But that could be a nine. It could be someone who is the peacemaker, the mediator, the facilitator. But it could also be the two, someone who wants to help everybody else so that they are loved, right?
Absolutely. It could be a seven because a social seven is very much about helping people. Right. But there's a different motivation behind it, and there's each of the nine numbers has a nuance of energy. Either it's an inward energy, an outward energy, or an adaptive energy. So energy doesn't lie, and in fact, when I teach this, which I do regularly, one of the first things we look at is what's the energy. Because it doesn't like you can get clues from that. And the best way of learning this is, first of all, not trying to learn all nine because your head will explode. It's about you first, learning about you first, and learning your own and understanding your own nuances, because then that gives you access to understanding and recognizing other characteristics and other types.
Let's say you said a minute ago, you said that we are actually attached to 5 numbers, and without getting too far into the weeds, do you want to give just a quickie overview of what that means?
Yeah, real quick, because you have a dominant type, which is that's the first thing that you look for is what from their energy and so on as well. But they also have wings. So if you are, for example, if you are an 8, then your wings are the numbers either side. So we have that predominant type, but then there's a blending of the 2 types either side of your main number. So if I'm an 8, then I have a blending from the 9 and I have a blending from the 7. So it reminds me of the blending in an artist's color wheel. I don't know whether if you've ever done art and you're blending the colors, you're blending and smudging and shading. The 9 numbers have blends and different shades, if you like, around the circle.
That's a good way to put it.
So it's just a little smudging from one side, just a little, or a smudging from the other side. And what they do is, all the wings really do is they balance our type. So you get a little influence from that number either side. So as I said, an 8 might have blending of characteristic of the 7 type a little bit, and or the 9 type. And it gives different nuances. It doesn't mean that you are that number, that you're suddenly going to turn into a 7 or a 9. It just means that you have some, that the 8 will have some, if they have a 7 wing, they're going to have a bit of that enthusiasm. They're going to have a bit of that,
they lean on that a little bit.
Yeah, they might lean on that a little bit. So you'll see the nuance of that. And that's different to the 9 type, which is more of that passive, laid back. It doesn't mean they're going to be laid back. They're still going to be an 8 predominantly.
So the way I would take that if I can take my layperson, is that if you're an 8 with a 7 wing, and y'all, if you look at this on a wheel, you'll see what we're talking about because these numbers are literally physically side by side on the diagram. But if you're an 8 and your natural way of coping is by being invulnerable, by being this sort of dominant, strong, take charge kind of person, you lean on your 7, then it might be that when you need a little extra, like your tendency would be to show that dominance or that confidence by taking on adventure, by trying some new big scary thing or whatever. But if you're more of an 8 with a 9 wing, you lean on the other side, then it might be the way that you exercise that dominance is by facilitating, leading, mediating, but with that super strong kind of 8 kind of energy. I don't know if that's a fair way to say it, but that's how I think of it.
I think that's it's really, and that's the nuances are different. So you can you do start to get this. So don't feel like, oh my goodness, this is so complicated. But that's why we start with the dominant one first of all, and then your own dominant number, and then you start to learn about the other numbers, and it all starts to fit into place. But most people have one wing that's more dominant than the other. So you might be, like you said, you might be an 8 with a 7 wing, for example. But what knowing your wings does is it helps you, and how it colors, if you like, those dominant types, it helps you see how you show up in your daily life. So there's kind of some little nuances there that you'll see. So that's I think
you could be right-handed or left-handed, but you can use both hands. You just have one you tend to use more, right? So it's the same kind of idea. Mm-hmm.
And I've coached a few people where there's, and they've got a little bit of both sometimes as well. Right. So there's no finite or, right or wrong. So where the other 2 numbers comes from is that we have movement. There's a direction of integration and disintegration. And we'll put this on the diagram that we share. You'll see that numbers have arrows going to them from another number, or arrows going away from them to another number. So you'll see that they're connected to another number. So, for example, let me give you an example. 7s have an arrow pointing to it from the 5, and because it integrates to 5.
Mm-hmm. Pulls in the 5.
It pulls in, it integrates to 5. So it's got an arrow pointing to it from the 5. So it's pulling that consciously. And when it's integration, you're moving towards here as part of your healthy growth. So it's the dominant type borrows traits from the other type. So the 7 is borrowing positive growth elements from the 5. So for me as a 7, as I've developed and grown, I take more time to step back. I can ponder things. I reflect more, which is classic characteristics of a 5. It doesn't mean I'm a 5. I'm still a 7.
Right.
But I will have that.
This is on the healthy side. This is like in growth. Side. Integration is on the growth side. So when you're a 7 in a good place and you are expanding in a positive way, you bring some of the characteristics of a 5 with you, which is when you're going to dig into things. You research things, and I've seen you do this. This is why you're an expert on the Enneagram. This is part of what you've done, right? It's exactly what you've done.
They become more focused. Yeah. And they'll really dig into things and look at things and become the expert on something. But this requires conscious choice. So the cool thing is you can look at what your dominant type is and look at the number you integrate to and look about borrowing some of those behaviors from that healthy part of that. Now, the other side of that then, the other line represents the disintegration.
Right.
So if you move this way in an unhealthy state when you're under stress or an increased period of uncertainty could do it as well. After you've pushed the behaviors of your own type, your dominant type, to the limit. So what you're doing in effect is borrowing the negative traits of that type that's in the path of your disintegration on the Enneagram. So again, just using the same examples, 7s go to 1. So if I'm under stress for a period of time, then I'll become a perfectionist. I'll become very critical of things and judgmental. When I disintegrate to a 1.
And things get a little more black and white. You get a little more stressed out about doing things the right way, etc.
Absolutely. And I might teach somebody else to do it my way. There's a bit more control there, which you wouldn't think initially. You think 7's control, but I'd be controlling. I can be in terms of that. So you don't become the type you integrate to or disintegrate to.
You borrow from them.
You borrow from them. You know, it's like a bit like a blending again, really. And what your healthy growth does is enables you to become more centered, so that you can move across and borrow those behaviors. So it's about conscious choice. And we can't say that one direction is all good and the other is all bad, because as humans, we've developed coping mechanisms in both directions. So you might be sitting there, you know, if you are a 7, I know that I've relied on my 1 in my international work, because when I was traveling the world and training, I don't know, a conflict management in Beirut, which I've done.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't go down too well, but anyway, conflict management in Beirut. I'd be there. I would arrive in a different country. Nobody else would be there that I know. I had to get the training materials, find them, and set the room up and everything like this. So I was. It wasn't stressful. I used to love setting up the room and breaking the room down. And that's the positive side of the 1, being organized, being structured, knowing what was there.
And you had to do it right. The stakes were high. When you're doing conflict management in Beirut, the stakes are going to be high.
Definitely.
So you need to get it right. So that perfectionism pulling on that would help you in that situation.
Absolutely. So really knowing and understanding these, and then tracking them, you can see where you're going in your daily life, and you start to notice it. I know it sounds like a lot, but we are connected to 5 numbers. And honestly, you might find a little bit of every number in you, but you will have a predominant number, and that's the first place to go to and start to learn about it.
I want to come back to the word pattern, because I've heard you say this all the time. You're in pattern, or I'm in pattern, or she's being in pattern right now. Learning how to recognize, which I think should resonate with healers, because that's part of kind of what we do. We look for patterns in the way our clients behave, or the way they live, and almost in any kind of healing area you're in. If you're a physical therapist, you're probably looking for patterns in how your client walks or bends.
Right.
You know,
right, totally.
As a psychotherapist, I have long noticed, I sort of instinctively look for patterns in how things have unfolded in their life, right?
Right.
So I wanted to talk about, like, partly why this is worth learning about. And one thing I want to just sort of point out to everybody, if you find yourself feeling a little overwhelmed right now, or kind of going, oh my gosh, so many numbers, this is the beauty of the Enneagram. It is not a one size fits all. It is, like, there is enough nuance that the more you learn about it, you really can sort of see how there is a theme, but there are variations that really do help us understand ourselves as unique individuals. So it's both and. There's a structure and a pattern, but there's also fluctuation and variability that I think is part of why this is such an elegant system.
It is.
I love that. Give us just a couple of examples, maybe, of like how we use this, either to how we might get in our own way as a business owner. Let's talk about that more than anything. As a practice owner, how does this impact us? How does knowing your pattern help you?
I mean, as a business owner, but it's the same as being a coach or even a therapist, because you can, let me just pick a number. Let's say 1, first one that's just come into my head here, but you're doing things right. So you want to do everything right. You want to follow the rules rigidly. So as a business owner, you might be following a template, or you might be you've seen something, or you've listened to a podcast, or you've listened to a training on something, and you're taking it step by step rigidly. Right. And it takes you forever because you're wanting to get it right. I have my coaching clients are coaches developing their businesses, and they can get so stuck because it's not perfect yet. And they'll end up procrastinating it around it.
Analysis by paralysis.
And another thing that ones will do is they'll shy away from the emotional stuff. So they want to keep it objective. I mean, the number of times I've had ones come to me about the business and say, okay, I just need to know what needs fixing. And there isn't anything to fix, because ones are great at fixing. You want to fix things, and they want to take responsibility for everything.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's not possible. So that's how you can sometimes get in your own way as a business owner, as a 1. You might find that your clients' behaviors rub against your own perception of what's right and wrong.
Right.
You could find that too. And that's hard, because behavior breeds behavior. If you're in pattern, you're going to react rather than a response. There's no gap between stimulus and response there. So you might end up saying, so I had to coach somebody fairly recently who had a situation like that. So to help them, because they felt really bad about it afterwards, because that their client had closed down as a result of it, because that person was kind of being a little condescending, even though it wasn't their intention. Because one thing to remember is, for all of us, we're judged in life by our actions, what we do, what we say, how we act. But we judge ourselves by our intentions. So, and we don't communicate our intentions. So our intentions matching our actions. Because, as I say, we'll judge somebody else by their actions.
Right.
And so how you show up for me is who you are. But your intentions might be sound, but you might be...
So if I'm a 1... And I'm just trying to keep you out of trouble.
Yeah.
Like there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, and we all know what it is.
Yeah.
We don't really, but I think we do. And I'm your coach, or I'm your therapist, or I'm your healing professional in whatever way. I know what you should be doing, darn it.
Yeah.
And when you don't do it, I'm going to get mad at you, or resentful, or irritated, or I may speak to you with a certain sharper tone.
Yes.
Or I might miss something in you because I'm so stuck on the right and wrong that I'm not tuning into the intuitive or the feelings and all that kind of stuff. Got it.
Absolutely.
On the other hand, how can that help you as a 1?
Well, it can help you as a 1 in many ways, because it's good having structure. It's good knowing what rights and wrongs. Ones can give advice, so if advice is needed, they can support people. They are very loyal. They are, in the sense that they are very dedicated to helping you and making sure that you have what you need to get things right. So they can be they're very reliable. Very reliable,
trustworthy, predictable. I'm going to guess a 1 would have really good boundaries. Good boundaries.
Yes.
Which would serve... One of the problems I see some healing arts folks have is that they are such caring, loving, open-hearted people that the boundaries tend to go out the window sometime. If you're a 1 and you're a psychotherapist or a massage therapist, I'm going to guess you have pretty good boundaries around your time or how you get paid, which actually is good for your clients too.
Absolutely. So, I mean, they're doing the right things. Yeah. They've got high standards. They're detail-oriented. Often.
Their insurance is the right kind of insurance.
Absolutely. And they're up to date. They're up to date on the paperwork.
They're following the COVID protocols.
Absolutely. It's color-coded in different pens.
Yeah.
They're clear thinking. They're great at providing clarity and structure. And they're hardworking. So that they would be they're the superpowers, if you like, of a 1.
So let's pick another number and look at how it can work for you or against you as a practice owner.
So choose a number. Spin the dial. What number would you like to start with?
Let's do 4s.
4, okay. So if we look at 4s, then how 4s can get in their own way. Certainly, first of all, idealization, because they can have all these dreams about what they want to be, and they know it could be better and should be better and so on, but they're not actually moving it forward. So I've worked with several 4s who kind of wallow in it and don't. They've got the idea of what they want, but they're not making it real. So they'll stay in the imagination rather than taking action. You might find that they stay in the emotional and feelings work rather than the strategy side of things.
So they're dreaming. They're dreaming.
Yeah, they're dreaming. Or their feelings drive how they work. So they sit and watch Netflix for 3 weeks because the mood wasn't right, and I didn't get anything done, and I didn't reach out to those clients that I said I'd follow up with, and those kind of things. So from a business perspective,
I remember our mutual friend and Coach Christine saying one time that successful people do things because it needs to be done, and something, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of, you don't wait till you feel like it. Yeah. But somebody who is a 4 is going to wait till they feel like it.
If you're going to wait and I've had clients like that. I mean, I had an amazing client who transformed. She was the one that was sat on the sofa, not doing anything and watching Netflix and so on. And we worked together a period of time, and she ended up developing a 6-figure business within a year.
Wow.
Because she realized that she is not her feelings. She was not her feelings, and there's a balance, and she has a choice. So they can be envious as well. So they might be envious. They could even be envious of the client. If depending on the client, if I've had that before where they can get twisted and contorted as a result of that. And they can also get hooked into stories in their own story, lost in their own story, and hooked into the emotions around that story. So they're the things with the 4.
And I would
there's
think
a self-loathing there.
As a healing person or healing arts professional, if you are a 4, you feel things so deeply, you may also sort of let your emotions drive your work.
Totally.
At, how you do whatever it is that you do, rather than applying strategy and the training.
You focus too much on the emotions, and they don't get, that person doesn't get anything done.
But the good side, what's the good side of being a 4?
The good side, well, there's a lot of, again, like all of them, there's some really good things. I mean, authenticity is the first one that comes to mind with me every time. Healthy 4s are, if you like, courageously authentic. Being real and honest with themselves and others. They are emotionally intuitive as well. That deep sense of tapping into and understanding how others are feeling, which is very, very powerful. And the depth of that feeling, they understand the richness of it, and they aren't afraid to explore it with you. So they'll take you to depths that, you may not want to go, but not in a horrible way, that you need to go to be able to release things. So they have that real depth of understanding.
So they won't be afraid to go there with you. So they are great companions if you have some hard work to do of your own.
Yeah. And they'll they have that tenderness. There's an empathy piece to it too. They are empathic because they can feel those feelings too. So they'll explore it with you. They're a great partner to have.
This is so good. I mean, I'm mindful we could talk about it all day.
Well, there's just one other point there is that they love the beauty in everything for us as well. So, they can naturally tune into the aesthetics of life and know how to enhance them, if you like. They know how to move that forward. So I just wanted to make sure I covered all the superpowers there.
Each of the 9 types has a superpower. Each of the 9 types has something that it's just like anything else, y'all. It can work for you or against you, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and that's the thing. When you're learning the Enneagram, often we focus on the patterns and you don't focus on the gifts. One of the things I do in my Enneagram and the coach program is we look at all of it. So we look at and how to coach all of it too. So how to bring out, how to help them with their authenticity, that to utilize that depth of feeling in the work that they do. And that's what I did with the 4. That was, I was talking about who was sat on the couch watching Netflix. Use that superpower and tap into that 3 wing that she had. To help her to achieve. And she's gone from strength to strength ever since. It's been phenomenal.
So I want to come back to something you said at the very beginning, and then we'll start to pull this to a close. I knew it was going to be a long one today because this could be a 6-month workshop. So at the beginning, you said that you had tons of training, tons of experience. You knew how to use the DISC. You knew how to use Myers-Briggs. There are all kinds of personality inventories out there. And if you're in the mental health world, there's like tons of them, even more, that we use to assess and understand people. This is used in corporate America in all kinds of ways. And yet, even with all of those tools, something wasn't quite clicking. Even though you knew how to coach, you were trained, you understood people, but there was something missing. And you said that once you began to use the Enneagram as a framework, you began to, all of a sudden, things began to make sense. Why you could teach, say, an executive team of 5 senior vice presidents, how to do something. And it would work for 3 of them and not for 2 of them because they had their patterns, their approach, their mindset, their perspective was unique to them depending upon what personality type they tend to have. I just kind of want to go back to that because I think to me, the big thing about all of this is why this is worth learning, how this can make you more successful as a business owner, as a practice owner, and as a clinician or as a healer. I just kind of want to sort of pull all that together in whatever way you think.
Yeah. I mean, let me bring that to really that it's almost like a ticket to success in a sense because, you got into this practice and this profession because you want to help other people. You want to help other people be successful. You want to help others thrive in whatever way that. And as altruistic as we are as helpers, you also want to make money, which I know is what you talk about.
Yep.
At the beginning of every all single podcast, all the time. So, So really, if you're like me, I'm running my practice, my professional practice. It's twofold. I want my clients to achieve their goals. I want them to be successful. I want them to have those happy, healthy lives. I want them to have the breakthroughs and the transformational change that they really need. But I also want to make money too, because that's the nature of running a business.
Right.
So the key thing is the first one, and helping them to be the most successful they possibly can be, helping them in the best way that you absolutely can. The first makes the second possible, helps you to make money in your business, because what happens is that people who love your work because you're working with them at a really deep level and you really understand them, and it's like magic, it's how did you know that about me? They are going to tell their friends, they're going to tell other people. And a lot of our businesses, my business as well as your businesses, I'm sure, grow by word of mouth and referral. So the more happy clients, the more clients that you've really made transformational change and made a difference to their lives, that you've helped them do that to their own lives, then the more referrals, and more referrals means a healthy, happy business, because you're making more money, more people are coming in. And that's really, it's kind of like a blueprint really in that regard. I mean, the biggest thing for me is that I learned from all of this was that you only understand your clients to the level that you understand yourself.
Oh, listen to that, y'all. You only understand your clients to the level that you understand yourself. That's a writer downer.
Absolutely. Because, the Enneagram enables you have to go there first. And this is a piece that is missing. Because we're so busy outwardly helping everybody else, whatever Enneagram type you are, that if you're not prepared to go deep for yourself first, and that's what the Enneagram enables you to do. A lot of people who come to me for coaching with the Enneagram and my Enneagram work often want to learn more about themselves. But the last piece of that the valuable framework, is to understand how to work with each type. So it's knowing your own type, understanding the nuances, and then learning to understand the other 8 types as well. So,
you know how to work with them.
So you can understand, and the more ongoing learning all the time, you learn more and more and more. And you might use it in the background, first of all. I used to use it in the background. I didn't used to talk about the Enneagram, but I used to look for patterns, a bit like you were saying, is she 2 or is she a 1? And then I'd go and read it, and then maybe I'd go and talk to my Enneagram coach.
Right.
And I'd learn about it. I mean, I'm an accredited professional with the Enneagram
Institute.
Yeah, the International Enneagram Institute Association. Sorry to get the title right. And my programs are accredited with them now too. So so it's the depth and breadth and finding out and learning about it that makes a big difference. But understanding your clients really deeply, and then how to coach each one makes a huge difference.
And I will tell you all, I do this. I do this in my coaching practice, and I do it in my counseling practice. I still have both. Y'all know I have two sides of what I do. I use it all the time. And I find myself asking people, are you familiar with this concept? Have you ever thought about this? What do you know about it? I'm curious I wonder if this might be what we're looking at here. And it really does help. So let's just tell people where to go next, Elaine. So if somebody's like, okay, I got it. How do I figure this out? Where do I even go? Do I just go take one of those little quizzes online? And I took one and it told me I was 3 different numbers. What do I do now? How do I figure this out?
8 different numbers.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, I mean, what to do now? I mean, if I have a free resource, which is available. So if you type in 9 styles coaching.com, and I think you're going to put that on the
I am going to put that in the show notes. Yeah.
And I've created it's a guide. It's got much more information than what we've talked about today, but it's 9 personality styles and how to coach them, how best to coach them.
Awesome.
And it's a coach's guide to creating transformational client results. This is a great place to start because it will guide you in more depth about each of the 9 styles. And then if you want to look a little further into it, or you really think this could be really helpful and you don't know where to go next, then I run a program that you know very well,
Yes.
that you know and love. And there's a certified version of it too, for Enneagram and the Coach, which actually teaches this work. So it goes in depth. It helps you to understand yourself and really understand that and how you show up. And then enables you to start to understand the nuances of the different types. So you can then start to use this work with your clients. And it really does make a huge, huge difference.
So I'll tell you, I took her course, and I am technically certified, but I was in one of the early few versions of her course as she was figuring all this stuff out. But one of the things from taking your course, Elaine, that I learned was, I already knew a little bit about it, but it was super high level. And so just taking that course with you taught me to look at the motivations of somebody, the energy of somebody, honestly, the body language of somebody. Like there are all these sort of subtle things. So it really is good stuff. There's so much to learn. So that free resource is super handy. That will give people a nice way of kind of diving into this a little bit more. And I think I would say, if you're curious about what your own number is, I would not recommend taking one of those online quizzes. That's not really the best way to do it.
No.
Learn more about it first, and you'll start to sort it out.
Yeah, have a read through, see if one of those numbers resonates with you. If all the numbers resonate you, that gives a clue too, by the way. And I would, be happy to chat with you on a quick call or something like that if you want to talk a little more about it. And happy to guide you in the right direction. So
excellent,
absolutely.
So how would they reach you? What's the best way for people to find you if they want to find you?
If they want to find me directly, you could email me at Elaine, ELAINE, at Coach Brilliant. That's the word coach, and then the word brilliant.com. So Elaine at coachbrilliant.com. And that's my personal email address. So you can reach out to me directly, and happy to chat. I can talk Enneagram till the cows come home.
This is true.
I'm really happy.
So can I? So I will put all that in the show notes, and I do encourage you all to reach out to Elaine if you'd like to go a little bit deeper, because she really does know this stuff, because she's a 7 and she goes to a 5 when she's in a good place, which means she's dug into it. So is there anything that we haven't said that we need to share, say, pull together to make this interview complete?
I would just go back to the one thing that I said. Two things that I said. One is this, I thought I knew everything. I have practiced this for 30 odd years. And, so I would say the first thing is that never stop learning and growing, because this really is the missing piece. The more that you understand yourself, and I go back to that quote that I said that, you only understand your clients to the level that you understand yourself. Yeah. If you want to be really excellent, professional, I would be bold enough to say that everybody should learn the Enneagram. And I'm not trying to sell the Enneagram.
Right.
In that
you don't
regard.
Have an affiliate link.
No, I don't have an affiliate link to Enneagram.com or anything like that. But I just know the profound difference it's made, not only to the results that my clients get, but also to my understanding of me and how I show up as a coach and as a leader of people, but also how I can help others and how I can support them. Because understanding yourself is the key to running a successful practice, because you have happy clients and you have a happy business as well.
Amen. Amen. And amen, y'all. So thank you so much, Elaine. This has been such a great conversation. I know we covered a lot of ground in a short time, which is not an easy thing to do, but I really appreciate you being the guide as we work our way through the roadmap that the Enneagram provides for all of us. It's just really great. Thank you so much for being here, my friend.
You are so welcome, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you. Thanks, Wendy.
And that, my friends, is a wrap. That's what we've got for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you got as much out of this as I want you to. And if you want to go deeper, be sure and check out the show notes below for all the goodies. Thanks, everybody. Have a great one, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.